Some perfumes are difficult to understand when we were young, not because they're too complex, but maybe because we simply haven't lived enough life yet. Amouage Memoir Man, one of those fragrances I only truly began to understand after turning 40. It was released by Amouage around 2010, and when speaking about the creative intention behind this fragrance, the perfumer Karen Spanner said she wanted to create the image of a man gazing at his past alone, which is a complex moment suspended between clarity and confusion. Let me give it a try. Actually, I used it very often in the past couple of years. I got my bottle back from 2020. It uses wormwood and mint in the opening. Now I'm thinking maybe because they have the same quality. They're bright, slightly bitter, and almost like an act of forcing oneself to stay awake. Then in the middle part, the incense and smoky woods take over the heart of the fragrance, making it heavier and more obscure before amber and leather appear in the dry dawn, which gave it a sense of warmth after emotional sediment has settled. So when I first wore it, I simply thought, yes, it is a very beautiful scent. It smelled layered and wearable, not just for men, but for everyone. But I had never truly thought about the concept, the meaning of the word memoir, and what the smoky atmosphere created by incense might really signify in this bottle. Have you ever tried to remember something from a long time ago? Not something dramatic, perhaps just an ordinary afternoon, someone's voices, or a moment you once thought you would remember forever. You try to pull it back. You can feel that it is there somewhere, but you cannot grasp it, its outline. It's very blurry now. It is fluid. Its edges keeps dissolving outward. You think you're remembering it, but in fact you are reimagining it. This was when I first began to think seriously about the word memoir. Many people confuse it with autobiography, assuming both are simply about writing one's own life. But there is a fundamental difference. Autobiography wants objectivity. It tries to restore facts, pretending to be an archive. And memoir never really makes that promise. Memoir is subjective, partial, and filtered through the author's present emotions. When you write a memoir, you are not writing what happened. You are writing what I remember happening. The difference between the two is actually much greater than we imagine. The essence of memory is never simply what happened in the past. It is what is generated when the past and the present meet in this very moment. So what is the meaning of this smoky quality? Now I can get the incense now. Smoke is what remains after something has burned. So when we see smoke, we know there was fire, but the fire is no longer there. You do not know how large it was, how hot it was, or what color it had. We only know that something once burned, and now it has become smoke. And smoke has a shape, but that shape is always changing. It spreads through the air, its boundaries blur, it gradually merges with everything around it, and finally disappears somewhere beyond visibility. When I wore Memoir Man again this year and smelled that cool breath of wormwood and mint, I began to feel that this was a very truthful opening or beginning. It's bright, it's bounded, it's clear, like the way something appears before time has touched it. The wormwood is so important here. It is not a pleasing kind of grain. It is not a soft herbal note, but something medicinal and bitterly awake. It makes me feel that this fragrance does not first invite you to think into memory. Instead, it pulls you awake from the present. It's like someone taking a deep breath before opening an old diary. You know that what you're about to face will not be entirely easy. So the opening is not nostalgia. It is the preparation for entering nostalgia. And then the fragrance begins to change. Incense appears. Smoky woods slowly rise. The killing herbal notes from the opening begin to retreat, not vanishing suddenly, but gradually being diluted, submerged, and eventually replaced by something darker and heavier. And this process is long, and it is difficult to say exactly when it begins, just as it is difficult to say when an experience first becomes a memory. And there is no precise moment, right? And one day you simply realize that it has already become the past. And incense is different from ordinary smoke. Ordinary smoke may suggest fire, wood, and ash, but incense also creates a sense of ritual. It slows down the air, raises the space, and makes even the human voice seem quieter. So the heart of Memoir Man is not merely smoke or smoky. It feels as if memory has been placed inside a space resembling probably a church, a temple, or an old study. You're not consuming the past. You are inhabiting the past. There is even something slightly commemorative about it. Not mourning a person, but mourning a version of yourself that can no longer be returned to. At its densest point, Memoir Man feels like a fog. Incense and smoky woods move continuously on the skin, creating a texture. And it is not suffocating, but it is not light either. It gives the feeling of being inside a vast space, high ceiling, empty, but dimly lit. Whenever I smell this part, one phrase comes to my mind is unresolved. Like those life questions you have not yet figured out. Like the things you know you will have to face eventually, but can only leave there for now. And they do not disappear. They simply move with the smoke, waiting for you to revisit. And for me, this is the most inward-looking part of this fragrance. It does not project outward. It speaks only to self. Now that I am middle-aged, I suddenly feel I understand this part very well. But in the end, the smoke disperses slowly. Amber emerges, vanilla appears, and the warmth of leather comes forward. The whole fragrance becomes rounder, warmer, and slightly more at peace. And you know, one day after all the storms have passed, you suddenly find that you can talk about something without being overwhelmed or too emotional. Not because it no longer matters, but because it has finally truly become the past. It has become part of your body and grown together with you. The amber and vanilla left at the end are the sediment of this emotion. The details have blurred, but the feeling remains, and it is warmer and more soothing than it was at the time. This is why memory always seems more veiled than the actual moment. I also find the man in Memoir Man very interesting. And this is not the kind of masculinity typically illustrated or constructed in commercial men's fragrance, like clean, forceful, aesthetic with a sharp edge of sexiness. Its masculinity turns very, very inward. It is very silent. It is a man, not necessarily a man, it is anybody who's sitting alone in a dark room sorting through their life. And it is not in a hurry to prove anything. It feels more like someone who has finally reached an edge where they begin to admit that they do not completely understand themselves. And now that I'm 40, I feel I finally understand this a little. The cruelest and most beautiful thing about memory is that it is not something perfectly preserved. It is not a photograph in a drawer. It is not a file on a hard drive. Every time we remember something, it is always recolored by our present circumstances. The strange thing is, when we remember the same thing at different ages, it doesn't feel the same at all. Something we remembered when we were young may feel completely different when we think about it again in middle age. And that to me is the most moving part of Memoir Man. It doesn't try to bring the past back exactly as it was. Instead, it lets you smell the way the past is being changed by who you are now. Through its structure, it shows us how memory is formed, how it shifts, and how the past is rewritten every time we return to it. And this was my first bottle of Amouage, and it remains my favorite one. Within the Amouage family, of course, there are fragrances that are more complex, more dazzling, but this is the perfume that resonates with me the most. It does not beautify time. It restores the texture of time. It tells you what time feels like, the suddenness, the dissolving of boundaries, and that finally, the quiet acceptance. Okay, so that's my thought on Memoir Man. I'll see you next episode. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.